Thanks for joining us and welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast. Today, we're talking about the dangers of disunity in the church.
You are watching the Beyond Sunday podcast.
So last week, we talked about the value of unity, how it brings blessing, and started to talk about just some of the warnings that we need to be mindful of if disunity starts to occur. And disunity is an interesting thing because one of the fastest ways to build community, not necessarily a very stable or good one, but one of the fastest ways to gain consensus is around negativity. So as negative ideas, negative statements begin to flourish, it's easy to start gathering people around. So we can be very well known for what we're against.
It's like being drawn to a fire.
Right. Here's this thing. It lures you in. It's a dangerous place to stand very close to the fire, but it does draw us in. And so today we want to really look at different stages of disunity, how we can progress into that, and the impact that it has on us here as a church. Mm-hmm. So what we're looking at are some issues that will be coming up, and we've got 10 steps for you to look at.
Yeah, we want to just go through this progressive step-by-step process so that, you know, maybe even now, if you see it, or, you know, I hope not, but maybe in your own life, you have a tendency to go down this path, one step after another. Yeah. Let's identify what those steps are and know how to stop and go back in the other direction. We said last time, you know, this is something Jesus has prayed for. It's one of the last things he prayed for before he was crucified. This is incredibly important to the heart of God. Right. We said before, God is going to bless unity, right, and life flows out of that. We put ourselves in a position to be blessed. Without unity, we don't experience God's blessing. Why would he bless something that's not going to go well? Right. And there's no life in it. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about those 10 stages of unity, or of I guess it's this 10 stages of progression into disunity, right. Yeah. And make certain then that we look at, okay, how can we do course corrections? And really it comes out of our own heart. Right. The Bible tells us out of our own heart, our mouth speaks. It also reminds us in Jeremiah 17, our hearts are deceitful beyond cure. Yep. That's why we need one another, and we need to give one another permission to say, hey, let's be careful about a unity issue here. Mm-hmm. And it's, again, we said last time, it's so fragile. It takes a lot of hard work to build unity. Right. My grandfather used to say, boys, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation. You can destroy it in 15 minutes. Unity is kind of the same way. You could have incredible unity in your family or in your church or in your organization. It can get destroyed in 15 minutes. Yep. So let's really be intentional and walk through these steps so that we know what to look for, right, and how to make a course correction and retreat back to unity instead of disunity.
Right. So the 10 steps that we're talking about actually come from some training and teaching by Mark Rutland. So this was some training that we had gone through at one point in time. And one of the things I found interesting is a lot of times when you look at disunity, when you look at, kind of a heavy-handed word, it sounds like, but the word rebellion, you start looking at some of those kinds of things, you're frequently, I think, at least for me, looking for major things. But one of the things that he starts with are very small things. It is that progressive step. Here's that first step. And if we can be mindful of this, then we can turn around a lot faster. Yeah. Restoring unity is so much easier the sooner we find it. So the first thing that he talks to us about is an independent spirit. So that's the first step of division that we're going to see. And in this, I'm really looking at forging my own path. I've got my own ideas. I think my ideas are really good, and that doesn't seem like a bad thing to begin with. But if this is taken to an unhealthy place, I could end up finding myself removing from accountability a little bit. I've got really good ideas. I don't really need to check with people. I think mine are good.
Especially if you're going to move out from under an authority structure, right, where you know you're supposed to be. In essence, it's the same spirit that Satan has under the authority of God. Wow. He says, I don't want to be the leader of worship. I want to be the object of worship.
Right.
So,
a big spot.
he creates this independent spirit that says, and it's more than rebellion even in that case.
Right.
It's more than just a small rebellion. It's mutiny. And I'm fond of saying, there is no such thing as a small mutiny.
Small mutiny, no. No.
It just doesn't work. And that's what happens when you move into this independent spirit. If
Right.
you're moving out from under the authority structure that you're supposed to be in, it gets really slippery and really dicey quick.
Sure. And for an organization, you start finding yourself, hey, I'm out of sync with the leader. For the organization, there's sideways energy involved because if we're pursuing different ideas and things like that, we're all chasing things. We're all less effective than we could be. And that's just the first step. So the second step is what is called an ambitious motivation. So at this stage, not only do I have my own ideas, but I'm looking for my own personal recognition. So I want to make sure that people notice me. I'm drawing attention to myself in these kinds of ways. And you can even see that in this stage, I'm only looking for really the acceptance or the appreciation of the people that matter. So in our context, that might be the lead pastor. It might be the congregation. I want to make sure that they like me. I want to make sure that they approve of me. And the team may actually get sacrificed a little bit there because I'm looking out for my own glory a little bit.
Yeah, it's an envy thing that begins to subtly creep in
Right.
to your spirit. You want people to notice you,
Right.
and applaud you instead of the person that may be getting the applause or the accolades in the moment.
Right. And that could be really hard when you're sitting there and you're looking, hey, the lead pastor's there and people really think a great deal of him, but what about me? And it's such a dangerous and prideful place to be in. And I think you're so right when you say it's an envy situation. I want something that someone else has, and there's a part of me that feels like, if people just knew what I was contributing, then I would get what I deserve, actually, at that point.
Or if I can get him off the stage, I'd do a lot better job, or her.
Just give me a little time, and they'll appreciate me better than you.
Yeah, and there is a way to handle that feeling or that thought. One, you submit it to the Lord, but if there's unity, there's a safety to talk about ideas and present, hey, what if we did this kind of thing, rather than sit back in secret in the darkness and go, I just need to be on the platform. I could do so much better than that character.
Right.
So let's talk. Keep going here. Stage 3 and stage 4. The third stage is we begin to experience some spiritual pride. Again, such an insidious thing. Once we begin to seek our own platform, have our own ambition that's not healthy, then spiritual pride can set in, and we begin thinking, my ideas and my ways are better than theirs, and somebody needs to listen to me. And if they just listened to me, they'd know the better way to do things, and things would work better around here. And so again, then you're into self-promotion.
Right.
Jesus, that's one of the reasons Jesus says to us, if we're going to follow him, we have to deny ourselves and pick up our cross and follow him. And that really exists inside the authority structure in the kingdom of God. We've said, we're both family and we're an army. We're a kingdom. So there's family and government. And there's clear lines of authority. And, you might think, well, that sounds like normal coming from a lead pastor of a church who wants to be in charge. But really, I mean, and that may seem funny, but really at the end of the day, the truth is I'd just assume somebody else be in charge. There's actually a pressure or a mantle that carries with it
some weight. Yeah.
But if I talk about that openly, and I invite you and the team to say, help me, I need your input, I want your input, and then I actually listen to it, and we have the dialogue and the exchange, and we really do listen to one another instead of just not really listen but constantly promote our own thing, then it really destroys the spiritual pride, and it celebrates the differences and the strengths that we all bring to the table, and we get to celebrate and we get to protect one another from our blind spots, because spiritual pride has so much blindness, spiritual blindness with it, that you don't even know. You don't even know it's happening.
And for me, that's been something over the years that, in all honesty, to confess, is that, that's been an issue for me. I frequently have found myself saying, hey, I've got a best idea.
Right.
Hey, everybody, listen up. I've got this idea, and it really does just shut off so many other things.
Yeah.
The communication stops, trust starts breaking down. When you're insinuating yourself into that space with those ideas, you're just really shutting so many people down.
Yeah, that's great. And when we see those things happen, we realize, okay, we're already at stage 3 of this 10-step process. Next one goes then to vain imagination, step 4. That's when spiritual pride really sets in, and now you're like, well, nobody else is going to build me up. I guess I'm going to have to. It's the old look in the mirror and go, oh, Lord, it's hard to be humble when I'm perfect in every way. And you just start realizing,
I look in the mirror differently than you, I think. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, you start saying things like, I'm so misunderstood. Nobody listens to me. Nobody pays attention to my ideas. And then this critical spirit begins to enter into the equation, and you really, truly start being critical, not just internally, but there's little things you start throwing out, little innuendo. I mean, innuendo is as damaging or more so than the actual accusation.
Sure.
Well, I don't know how I just don't know where their heart is.
Yeah, just plant that seed, let somebody else come into that place there.
Yeah. You begin to get critical of authority, critical of the decisions that they make, critical of the ways they do whatever they do. And now, you're sliding into stage 5. You're halfway to 10.
Halfway.
You're halfway. You're halfway to total open mutiny, and you don't even realize it. Again, so easy to happen. Happens all the time. Happens on social media all the time. And
that's true.
We have to be careful of the platforms and what we say and how we say it, because we can be so much more critical than we realize. I mean, is there really a need to be critical at all in public?
Right.
If you have something to say to someone that's critical, if you really love them, wouldn't you call them aside and say, hey, help me understand what I'm seeing? Because I love you and I want to help you. And I may be missing it, or I may be able to help you, but that might be a healthy way to approach it, rather than go, start telling people
or cast it, just broadbanding out to the entire world. And maybe that person will know about that. Maybe they hear it secondhand or anything else. So that, like you said, I mean, at this point we're stepping into that 5th stage.
And here's where we start doing prayer requests.
Oh my!
I want you to pray for my friend.
I need a lot.
I'm just not sure, but it seems like maybe things are starting to go south. And you say just enough in the prayer to realize, I think I could figure out who he's talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We're starting to get
And so now,
now.
as we look at that, you said we're halfway, we're at that critical spirit. And so that's our 5th step. And that's really, I'm spending more time. I'm not even promoting myself anymore. So I've flipped over.
Yeah.
It's not about, hey, here's positive energy about me.
Yeah, that's our foregone conclusion. We know now, but this time we think we're already better. Now let's tear the other one down.
And so now I'm just finding faults with the person I'm talking to. And sadly, I feel like if I'm tearing someone down, then I'm gaining ground. I move forward not by my own virtue, having the best ideas like I did in previous steps, but I'm actually just pushing down a little bit so that I can elevate. And one of the worst things is we can become a little deceptive in the fact that when we look at other people, they make mistakes, they make decisions we don't agree with. It's not about differences of opinion or mistakes, but at this point, this is a character issue on their side. They have a character flaw, and that's what's going on here. And I think that's what really happens when that critical spirit starts settling in.
That's so powerful. And just a quick parenthesis to this, you know, I know this doesn't need to be said, but this is true in every relationship. This can be happening in marriage. It can be happening in a family. It can be happening in any organization. In any time there's two people in a relationship, this is critical.
Right.
And for unity and oneness to really happen, we have to make sure we don't go down this path. But we're giving these steps to you so that, and for all of us, we can help. Okay, because the next step is self-deception.
Right. So yeah,
we're starting to, you know, oh well, where are we going from here?
right. And this starts becoming even more dangerous because at this point we're actually, no kidding, deceiving ourselves. We don't even see our entire situation, the views around us, the way they should be. Our feelings, you were talking about Jeremiah in our last episode, how our heart is so deceptive. It's so sick. And so now at this point, if we're into self-deception, our heart is actually leading the way. Our feelings, our interior motivations are starting to guide forward. And with that, we're going to start judging things very differently. So we're not going to have good sound judgment on issues. Our views are going to get distorted as we look at these situations, and it's going to be hard to navigate anything forward from here. Our entire relationship is going to start getting affected due to the fact we can't see anything clearly.
Yeah, it's so important. We've said often our feelings, you know, we say this a lot around here. We have to be careful about how much authority we give to our feelings, because our feelings lie to us.
Right.
And when my feelings are my counsel, then I'm taking counsel from a very shady source.
Right.
Because my feelings are deceptive. They are what they are. I'm not discounting the reality of feelings, but I can't trust my feelings. My feelings don't necessarily have wisdom. My feelings aren't necessarily true. Jesus said the truth will set us free. And if my feelings aren't representative of reality and truth and wisdom, then I'm taking counsel from a very, very bad source. And then that leads us, you know, stage 7. We'll keep going here. Kind of a big word, demagoguery. We've become this. We've become our own source of wisdom. You know, now we've set ourselves on this platform, and we're way deep into division. In fact, we're so deep into division at this point, we've already decided I need to remove in some form or fashion this person that I don't agree with, and I got to put myself on the throne, on the platform. I've got to, and so now to do that, I got to stir up discontent. You know, don't you think we'd be better off if
that's a bad one. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or, that person, they just keep making these kinds of decisions. Right. And so now division is truly beginning to happen. Now we're trying to gain a team. We're getting help.
Yeah, I'm building my own alliance kind of thing.
Yeah, we're building alliances, and now we're deep into it.
Okay.
And we manipulate events, and it's all kinds of innuendo and I don't know. I've had this happen in my situation. I had years ago a guy who began to meet with people and say, I don't know, but it seems like maybe the pastor might be misappropriating money. Ooh. Well, the truth was, my name has never been on the checking account.
Okay.
There's always been layers of, from elders on down, layers of decision-making process.
Right.
And yeah, I speak into it. I have influence. But for me to be able to misappropriate funds, we've had those safeguards in place. Right. But all he had to do is to say to someone, I don't know, think maybe. And then now you're into gossip, which is the next stage. That's the next step. Now you're starting to gossip and slander another person. And it just, again, it's like we said earlier, it's like people are drawn to a fire or they stop and gawk at a car wreck. It's amazing how natural our human nature just wants to gravitate to that juicy, oh, no, really? I've got information. Now I'm an information broker. And it's just so easy for this to begin. In fact, when someone starts that conversation, one of the values we have here and in this organization is to say, if someone starts a conversation like that,
Okay.
our instruction always is to put up your hand and go,
Go talk to them.
yeah, you're talking
Yeah.
to the wrong person right now.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you may have a concern
Right.
about that person's judgment, leadership, decisions, whatever it might be. Have you talked to them? And not only have you talked to them, but if the answer is no, I haven't talked to them, then the instruction here is, well, if you haven't talked to them, I want you to go talk to them. And when are you going to, yeah, you almost finished the sentence. When are you going to do that?
Right.
So that we put in place some steps that lead back to unity. And we're clearly stopping someone who are going down this
Right.
now a slippery slope, and they're picking up speed
Oh,
fast.
right. We're almost at the bottom. Yeah.
Let's stop it and send them back the other direction.
Because if we don't stop it, we hit the last two phases, and at this next to last stage, at number 9, we're at the point of severing relationships. Yeah. So at this point, this has all been building up. Gossip's been going. I'm promoting myself. I'm tearing you down, and as we go through those things, it's becoming more and more frustrating. For the person who's actually generating all the division, they may not be getting ground the way they want to. And so they may actually be just switching over to open animosity. And sadly, it may be insidious enough that the leader may not even know about all the discontent that's fully going on. They probably have an understanding that there are some things going on, but the depth and the fullness of what's going on in someone's heart, they may not know. And unfortunately, at this point, just ceasing some of these behaviors, we can cease gossip, we can cease self-promotion, some of those things, apologize and everything else. But at this point, there's probably been enough damage that actual reconciliation needs to happen.
Absolutely.
We're beyond just, hey, let's just knock this off and get back to business. We need to actually reconcile.
And this is so important to the heart of God. That's why Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, says, if you go to worship and you remember that one of these issues is going on,
stop. Yeah.
Seeking reconciliation and rebuilding of the relationship is more important than your worship.
And finishing that.
Leave church and go get on the phone, set up a time to meet, maybe have someone else meet with you. Matthew 18 clearly gives us some great instruction for how to do this if we have trouble doing it together. But make it a higher priority than continuing your worship. Again, this is the family of God. This is God saying to his sons and daughters, stop fighting, get along, and then come together, reconciled and rebuilding relationship, and I'll change it for you. Or I'll help you change it.
Yep. And unfortunately, if it doesn't reconcile, we don't follow those instructions, and the last stage is open rebellion. We're at a point where bitterness is set in. Generally at this stage, the relationship is over. Everything, we may be organizationally together, but the relationship has at its end, and the person is really at a place where people just need to listen to me. You need to follow what I'm saying. And those two things can't coexist in the same space. And sadly, as we've walked through all of these things, I think the important thing to remember for my thought is that, we may look at those last couple steps and look at that and go, that's a shame. That's really divisive and everything else. But I think, as you were saying in the beginning, all of this has been divisive. Even stage 1 was divisive, and we really have to turn it all around.
Yeah, that's why it's so hard to make certain that we continue to build unity and that we make it a priority. And it's not that unity is the goal, but it is a high value. In other words,
that's fair.
Let me explain briefly. The goal is draw close to the heart of God and draw close to one another. It's Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? Love God and love one another.
Right.
And this process is really a process where love begins to break down. And sometimes people say, well, yeah, I love them, but I don't like them. I'm not gonna spend any time with them. But, I know I'm supposed to love them. Well, if that's really true, it's hard to be. There is no unity,
right?
And so again, it's It's so incredibly important to the heart of God and for his people, his family. His family is not going to be healthy, and his kingdom can't advance, and we won't experience and receive the blessing of God. Psalm 133, we read it the first segment of this podcast. When we are unified, God commands a blessing. And for us to be blessable, let's just do an evaluation. Let's do an assessment and even ask the Holy Spirit, help me see if there's any place, any relationship, marriage, family, church, my organization. Is there someone I need to go to? And someone was just telling me earlier today, they had done that after a tension in a relationship that had lasted years. And they had just done it recently, and it just immediately reconciled the relationship. There were even tears in the middle of it in that encounter. And healing happened and oneness, and now they are back together as brothers in Christ.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It is wonderful. Yeah. What's sad is they spent years apart.
Right.
And it could have gone a lifetime. Had someone not said, there's a tension here, I know there's a tension, and I need to go.
Yeah, let's fix this.
I need to go fix it.
Yeah.
I need to go back to before step one.
Right.
And be unified with my brother.
Right. And that reminds me, as you were just saying, one of the for me, one of the most impactful verses that you've shared over the years is right out of Psalm 139. Where David's inviting God to search him. And I think that's one of the most important things. We talked about self-deception through this and all these different issues. And it's when we're following our own heart, our own leadership, but when we invite God to do the leading and to show us and to have him search us, I think that makes all the difference in the world.
So good. So true.
Well, thanks for joining us today, and we'll hope to see you on our next episode of the Beyond Sunday podcast. We'll see you then, and take care.
This has been another episode of the Beyond Sunday podcast. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe.